Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hello, I'm DJ Ross. I'm in Mountain View, California.
On every episode of Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week we're playing Animal Well and Final Fantasy IX. Plus, we're learning that no one has ever really done with Slay the Spire.
Yeah, we're learning that a lot.
Plus, we were here Expeditions, The Friendship, briefly and poorly.
Yes, well, did we play it poorly? Was that our fault? What happened?
I don't... I mean, you know.
I mean, it was. I was just fishing for
nobody else
responses.
was playing it for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can talk about that.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
As DJ and I often say, save it for the show.
Save it for the show. Save it for the show, Randy.
Yeah. We've not said that a lot lately.
This is the show.
Because we've not done a lot of shows lately. We've taken a little time off.
True.
But we're back. We're excited to be back. We're happy to be back. We normally don't disappear for this long.
No. I had to apologize. I was on vacation for 2 weeks. I had said I was going to put out a playlist. I had the playlist all together. It was great. Good playlist.
Oh.
IMO. And then I just did not have the time to actually put it into a show format. so kind of pointless. But I think we do have, there'll be opportunity to share it later this year. So it'll not go to waste.
Hey, well, you had a cool new playlist to listen to while you were on vacation.
I didn't even bring it with me. So, whatever.
Wait, you have to bring a playlist with you? How is that?
Man,
there's technology for these things.
Don't even talk to me about getting stuff onto my iPod. I was doing that the night before my trip, and I was just like, wow, this is like, when did this become a nightmare? This is the worst.
That is usually Sarah and I at the airport, connected to the airport Wi-Fi as 2 minutes before boarding, trying to oh my God, we have to download music to our phones.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's never good. I always make very hasty choices. I'm like, why do I have the definitive, discography of Hall & Oates for my flight to LA?
I mean, you could do worse than that.
I mean, you could, sure.
You just hit the Spotify roulette. Just download 100 random songs and see what happens.
God. That would just be terrible, I'm sure.
See, I don't know what happened. I mean, I don't want to get into it. It's just I have a Windows PC. I have an iPhone. It's not the ideal combination of things to, to have your whole digital lifestyle go seamlessly.
Sure.
So yeah, there were complications, and I ended up not taking this playlist with me.
Mistakes were made.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a mistake.
No.
It's just my decision.
Sure. On purposes were made.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. That's a good way to frame it.
How's your trip?
It was great. It was very good. I was in Japan for a couple weeks. It's a little warm over there. It's the closest to summer it's been. What am I trying to say?
I don't know, DJ. I don't remember how to do this.
I've never been there when the weather was this warm.
Oh.
And typically I just spend the whole time I'm over there just basically hiking around Tokyo, because that's very interesting to me. But I was just like, oh man, it's so warm this time. I don't know how the Japanese people do it. Just wearing full suits all the time, just looking amazing. But here's me, just my, t-shirt and backpack, just being disgusting and sweaty. But besides that, it was very good. Nice to have a break. Nice to escape the country for a while.
Yeah. Cool. That's exciting. I've never been. It remains on my list. Definitely need to go there.
Yeah, I think you would enjoy it. I mean, it's very exciting. Tokyo is a very exciting city, but I was able to get outside Tokyo a little bit. Went west, saw this cool sort of park this that was designed by a couple of these conceptual artists. So it was very weird, as you can imagine, very strange architecture and landscaping. But it was also just on the side of this incredibly cool mountain, and it was very sort of overcast and misty while I was there, and there was sort of the misty clouds coming over the hills. I was like, oh, this is incredible. I didn't realize this sort of landscape was real. I thought this was just in those, those sort of landscape paintings that you always see.
Right.
But no, it exists. It's out there.
Awesome. Well, I'm a little bit jealous.
Yeah, well, you should go, and then I will be jealous.
That's how that works.
Yeah.
Cool. Any like gamer related things that you encountered in Japan?
Not especially. I
go to the Dragon Quest bar?
No, I've never been to the Dragon Quest bar, sadly. I feel like I do less video game stuff every time I go there. Like the first time, for sure, I was like, all right, just gonna go live in Akihabara or whatever.
Yeah.
And buy a bunch of like merch. I think that trip it was all about Monster Hunter for me. Bought a bunch of Monster Hunter little stuffy things. But this time I just like, okay, I'm gonna go to Akihabara once to get souvenirs for people and then never again. Because it's so crowded and like that's where the tourists are.
You get there and it's 6 billion people, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's still fun. Like I could definitely entertain myself there for a day, but it's just one of those like big tourist hotspots, so it's very chaotic. But yeah, like I said, I feel like I do less video game stuff every time. I didn't even go to a lot of arcades this time. Man, when I got there, I realized I had forgotten my Groove Coaster ID card or whatever for the arcades.
Oh no!
I was like, oh man, that's a bummer. That's the one, it's got my save profile on it. It's got my all my achievements when I did the Groove Coaster hat trick I played in arcades in Tokyo, Osaka, and Kyoto on different days or whatever it was. And I was like, well, that's too bad. But then I didn't even see any Groove Coaster machines while I was there, so that was also heartbreaking.
No. Has the Groove Coaster phenomenon reached its peak?
I think they've officially sort of ended service for those, so they're not releasing any new content, any new songs or anything. That happened several months ago, if not like a year ago.
Oh, interesting.
So it's been a while since that was like the new hot thing anyway. So it's not that surprising that I didn't see anything. They've since been replaced by a bunch of shiny new music games, which I didn't try because they were terrifying looking. But I was going
to say, what has everybody moved on to? But yeah.
There's like everything, like the one I was looking at, it had all these notes coming down a track, like sort of how you would expect a Guitar Hero game to look. But there was also like a joystick or something, and he kept sliding the player cursor or whatever back and forth. It looked very analog in kind of an interesting way. But that day I was just sort of like making a whirlwind tour through that arcade I just happened to run across. So I didn't actually stop and check stuff out. It's always cool to see that rhythm games and just even arcades are still a pretty big thing there.
Yeah.
Even though an increasingly larger proportion of them are filled with like crane games every time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that culture sort of lands in two places here. Either it's sort of a retro thing, like a barcade kind of situation, or it's Dave and Buster's, right? I think there really is not a place, at least as far as I can kind of like imagine in my head, that I've seen during my travels that lives in between, where it sort of is a modern arcade experience.
The like round one is pretty good if you have one of those in your area. Like it's maybe a little more on the Dave and Buster side. They got like all the big sort of redemption games. But when I was still going to those regularly, they had a ton of Japanese music games, or not even Japanese, just the bunch of the Korean ones as well. But yeah, pretty good selection if you're into that kind of stuff.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know where my closest round one is. Let's see.
There's some on the East Coast.
45 minutes away.
Oh, well, it's a bit far.
Yeah. Well, maybe worth the drive.
Yeah, I mean, worth going at least once just to check out the scene.
It's got bowling, too. I can bowl and video game.
Yeah. Go on, like, $1 beer day or whatever they do.
Well, Dave & Buster's Half Price Wednesday.
Yeah. We'll figure out when that is at round one, and you'll be all set.
Cool. I got karaoke and ping pong and darts.
Oh.
And what's Spoocha?
Oh, you don't know what Spoocha is?
Spocha. No, I don't know what that is.
Spocha. Well, neither do I, so...
Oh, okay.
We're out of luck. Spocha.
Let's see what it says.
Anyway.
There's a video. What is Spocha?
It's like pickleball.
Competitive trampolining.
Okay, no, I don't need that.
It just seems like a good way to get hurt.
I was just complaining about being sweaty in public, so this is not my thing.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot going on. Okay, I will share the video in the show notes if anyone's curious what Spochai is, but yeah, I am too old and too chubby.
That might you might have an advantage. Just like take people out.
I will share the one time that I went to a trampoline park. I had to be rescued from the pit.
Oh no! Well, that's not good.
It was a pit full of these like foamy things, and you bounced on the trampoline and flung yourself into it. And I'm like, that looks like fun. I could do that. And I had a pretty good time on the rest of the trampoline objectives. They had the thing where you could bounce and then do the slam dunk with the basketball and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, could not pull myself out of the foam pit. So they had to like get a stick and like yank me out of it. And yeah, and I was deeply embarrassed. And the dude was like, no, man, it happens all the time. I'm like, it doesn't happen to me all the time.
Right.
But,
first time it's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, no major spinal injuries, so at least that's good.
Yes. Yeah. Pride was wounded, but nothing else was.
Ooh.
But awesome. Sounds like a hell of a trip.
Yeah, it was good. Can't wait to go back. Probably when it's a little cooler.
Yeah.
Maybe during the winter. There's like a big ice festival I want to go to, but that's a thing for another time.
Yeah, okay. I go to the snow-capped mountain peaks. That's
yeah. I've never done Mount Fuji. That seems like it might be interesting. I don't know if I'm in good enough shape to like climb up to the top, but
yeah,
that probably requires some research or at least some planning.
And some what you call it? Some preparation.
Yeah.
Some training, some endurance training.
I heard it's like fairly mild. Like,
oh, really?
Like old people do it all the time. I mean, it's not like climbing Mount Everest or anything, but I feel like it's not just, you do it on a whim. Like, oh, I'm just going to climb Mount Fuji today.
Yeah. What are you doing?
And that's all I
was going
need
to go to the
know.
mall, but I think I'll climb Mount Fuji instead. Yeah.
Yeah, either mall or Mount Fuji, depending, what area I end up in today.
Cool. So we mentioned that we tried to play We Were Here Expeditions, the Friendship together before DJ's vacation. That was our last stream night, and it didn't go great. So we are not going to talk about it a lot, but we thought we would mention
try and avoid talking about it.
Yeah. So the We Were Here games are what sort of competitive co-op in a way, right? I mean, you and another player.
They're not competitive. Why do you? I think you're just making this into a thing where you try and kill me.
I just like to be competitive about it. Yeah.
I didn't realize this is how you thought of these games.
But they are definitely yeah. It's not even asynchronous. It's a co-op game, but you're like it divides you pretty quickly historically.
Yeah.
And you have to communicate with your other player over walkie-talkies and give them clues that solve a puzzle in their room, basically with elements from things you see in your room. And you're not supposed to be able to see your partner's screen. And it's a communication challenge in a lot of ways, right?
Yes, that's really what it comes down to. It's like, how well can you describe all the details of specific things happening?
Right.
It's like an escape room, but the two of you are in separate escape rooms simultaneously.
Right, and you need to be able to communicate with each other to get out of your mutual escape rooms.
Yeah. It's funny, like when we got into this, like we played a few of these at this point. I feel like we have a pretty good success rate at them.
Yeah.
And we get to that first puzzle, and I don't know what I was expecting, but I was just like, oh, right, that's how these games work. It's just describing like weird drawings that they've done in just like unnecessary detail.
Right.
But yeah.
Because you could say, for example, you could say like, I could see like icons on my side and it could correspond to buttons on a keyboard on DJ's side. And I have to go, okay, I see an icon that's it's like a triangle, but it has a circle on the top. And DJ will look at his keyboard and there'll be like 6 different versions of essentially that thing. Yeah,
exactly.
So you have to like be more specific. Is it sort of like an oval circle or is it like a circle circle? So that's where it sort of gets you, is that you could sort of be kind of blasé about it and give your friend kind of crappy descriptions, but they're probably not going to push the right buttons essentially to unlock whatever they have to unlock. And
but
this has
being
resulted
we were here veterans that we are,
Right.
we just completely aced that first puzzle, no problem.
just steamrolled through the first one and went, yes, we know exactly how to do. We speak your language.
Yeah. And then it was just like, yeah, this is going to be a nice little, 90-minute stream just in and out through this game. It'll be great.
And then we get to the second puzzle.
And then it was probably the most obtuse puzzle I've run into in a video game outside of, I don't know how many of those 9 persons, 9 doors games you played, but those got pretty esoteric.
Yes.
To the point where I think one of them, they made up their own alphabet that you needed to teach yourself. But, man, the second puzzle in this was difficult.
Yes. I think it was difficult to even sort of figure out, not just sort of figure out the solution, but figure out what is in fact the puzzle.
Right, just how the mechanics worked. I don't think we were able to determine how everything worked.
Not with some degree of assurance, no. There was, on one wall, there was like a color code, and there was clearly some sort of point value assigned to different color codes, and we thought maybe you had to sort of like get a high score or get a certainly high number, but there was also like a board game with big pieces, and there were 4 portals with doors that would open, and I could sort of see into DJ's kind of locked chamber, and he could kind of see into mine, but that didn't seem to benefit us in any way.
No.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, like, the color-coded thing, I felt what was the only part of the puzzle that we got, but then I thought about it, and I was like, I don't even know if we understood that completely.
No.
So, really just, I don't know what happened with this one.
Yeah. So it sort of seemed like we had to strategically pick up different types of, like, what icons or pieces you could play on a board, and then we were supposed to sort of guide each other towards where to play them. But it didn't ever sort of seem to make sense when we'd play them. Like, I'd put a piece down expecting a certain reaction and some other thing would happen. And I just could not understand for the life of me why it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And then we did that for an hour and a half and, made almost no progress.
I think there are just entirely too many things happening in that puzzle, because there were a lot of points where we were like, oh, I think we get it. So you should play this piece here or whatever. And then you do that, and then something completely unexpected, like completely different results would happen.
Right.
And I don't really understand what the thinking is behind designing a puzzle that complex. I know one of the sort of conceits behind this version of We Were Here is that, it's all about how strong of a bond you form with your co-op partner, which is where the friendship pun in the title comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, in the first puzzle, or, like, I guess this happens in all the puzzles, you get awarded a different, like, medal, like gold, silver, bronze, depending on how proficient you were at completing the puzzle. So I feel like they probably built in more complexity to allow, like, you can do the bare minimum solution, or if you really understand it and you're just amazing at communicating, you can maybe get that gold medal for each one. But this one, we're like, we didn't even get the bronze on it. We finished it, and I think we're pretty fed up at that point.
Yes.
Let's just finish it and get, let's do enough to get on to the next room so we don't do this puzzle anymore. So we completed it, and then it was basically like, no, try again.
Yep.
It was like, no, I think we're just going to bed.
Right. Yeah. After sort of beating our head against it for an hour and a half, the end result essentially was that we were able to open our kind of mutual doors and get back into kind of the lobby where it said, basically we had not done it correctly and had to try again. And we opted not to.
Oh, man.
So is it a bad game, or are we bad players?
I think that puzzle was questionable. Like, it was like, compared to the first puzzle, it was a significant jump up in complexity. And I was kind of like, man, I just want to finish this puzzle so we can get on to the next one. But in the back of my head, I was like, do you think the next one's going to be easier than this one?
Yeah.
Do you think they just get easier as it goes on? I don't know if that's how it's going to work.
No, because that first one started off pretty easy. So I don't I don't think it was going to get easier as it went. If that was the second most difficult puzzle, I can only imagine what the third most difficult is like. So,
but I also found myself thinking, like, what could possibly be more difficult than this puzzle? And I realized, like, obviously a lot of things could be more difficult. But, like, how could they escalate from this puzzle in a way that was just not completely outlandish?
Yeah.
Like, this puzzle was quite difficult.
Hmm.
So I felt like the second, or whatever followed it, would have to be easier. At least in comparison.
I think, like, my sort of take on these kind of first-person, third-person puzzle games sometimes is to work backwards. I think that's like how you and I tackled playing Portal 2 co-op together, is like we knew the objective in every room we were in. So you had to kind of reverse engineer your way back to the place that you were standing. Like with it, after enough time with Portal, you sort of got the mechanics and understood what the switches did and kind of got a felt for the physics and stuff like that. So you could sort of like imagine a solution, and then it was just trial and error. And then with We Were Here, though, like I knew that we had to get out of the room, but nothing else was clear to me. Nothing worked.
Just like, all we have to do is just get out of this room. Okay,
right.
Yeah.
But nothing worked the way that I expected it to. Like, at no point did I sort of suddenly have like a lightning bolt moment where like, oh, wait, I get it. Here's what we have to do. And like, that is the best part of a puzzle game, in my opinion, where that sort of like that revelation kicks in. And like I said, you're like, oh, I get it. I speak your language, and we can sort of communicate. And like, I understand what the game wants me to do. And I just have to sort of figure out the magic words. And I never felt like that while we were playing this game.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Confounded me at every turn. Yes.
The earlier ones definitely felt more like weird sort of escape room, like escape rooms that you need to unlock your way out of. Whereas this one, we just ended up playing some arbitrary board game that we were then scored on. So that does seem like kind of a big shift from the earlier ones. I wonder if all the rest of the puzzles in this were like that.
Yeah.
So we'll never know.
Yeah. We had a conversation of like, do we want to go back to this game next week and try again? And I don't think I do.
Yeah, I was just like, I was trying to look up solutions to the puzzle online because like, if I kind of want to go back to it. I don't want to go back to this specific puzzle. I want to just get the Game Genie code.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not an expensive game.
No, but still.
At the same time, I'm just like, what were the other puzzles? Like, are they just as equally confusing as this one? I'm kind of curious just in that respect. Maybe I'll just watch the YouTube. Maybe next week we'll just watch somebody else play it on YouTube and react to it. That'll be great.
Well, there's a huge cottage industry for reaction videos. We can get in on that.
Yeah.
This
is our moment.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was a bummer because I really like those games, and I feel like they sort of come out with some degree of regularity that every now and then you are like, hey, there's a new one. Let's do that thing. And this one just sort of felt like we hit a wall.
Yeah, well, maybe the next one they'll dial it back a bit.
So, we will not be streaming this the next time. We have a stream night. So coming up on Monday, June 10th at 10 p.m. Eastern time, back on our usual sort of Monday night streams time slot. This is 10 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to go back to Slay the Spire.
Yes.
Which is a game that DJ and I both know how to play.
That has that going for it.
Sure. And it should be presumably much more entertaining than watching us fail repeatedly at solving a puzzle.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
My thinking behind this was, I think I talked about this on the last show, but anyway, I got way back into this ever since they announced the sequels coming out.
Yeah.
Because I didn't spend a whole lot of time with it previously. And for like the last 2 months or so, I forget when they announced it, that is just all I've been doing. I played like over 100 hours of this.
Woo!
I did not even open Desert Golfing once on my trip because I was playing Slay the Spire. Which, let me tell you, is not a good Subway game. That's something I really hope that they work on for the sequel, because you really got to have it be Subway friendly if you're going to make a mobile game. But I've seen a bunch of streams of people just playing Slay the Spire very sort of like strategically and having an interesting conversation about sort of like their thought process for the cards they're playing and the decisions they're making. And I thought that'd be something that would be interesting to try. And I also have never actually done a full clear of it. Like, I've cleared it with all the regular characters, but I've never done like, I never killed the heart or whatever it is. I've never done an
really?
ascension.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to get your tips as a veteran, because I know you also played quite a bit of this.
Yeah. To the tune of hundreds of hours myself. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's been quite a while since I've played it, so it'll be interesting to sort of come back to it.
I'm sure it's just like riding a bike.
After a break, but yeah, man, that'd be awesome if we could use our collective brain power on the definitive Slay the Spire playthrough. That'd be cool.
Yeah. So I think it'll be fun. We will find out next week.
Monday, June 10th, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Tune in for our Monday night streams. We'll be tackling Slay the Spire. Twitch.tv/VGHangover for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. As always, we recommend folks jump into our Discord. You can get a link to that at VGHangover.com. We always have an event up that says what the next stream is and where to tune in and all that fun stuff. So you will get to hear that information there. Well, if not first, you'll at least get to hear that information there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Second. You'll get it there second.
You'll get it there at some point.
10 minutes before we go live.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
No, it's never quite that disorganized. Yeah. Cool. That should be good. And that, it is not a game we have shied away from talking about on the show here. But I think every time we kind of come back to it, it sort of presents itself in some new and interesting way. And there's always some kind of fun sense of discovery as you're going through it. So
yeah.
Cool. I'm excited to revisit it with you.
Nice. Okay, great. Yeah, the more I've been playing it, I'm just like, this is the best game ever made. Like, it's really good. There's so much like complexity to it. I really enjoy it.
Yeah. And it's this weird little like gaming landmark in that like clearly there were like collectible card game deck builder games that existed before Slay the Spire, both in video game and actual in, card game form.
Mm-hmm.
But now it just sort of feels like every game that comes out that has like a deck building element is like aping Slay the Spire in some way.
Right.
For ill or for will, I think there have been some very like noble and interesting kind of variations on that, but a lot of it is just sort of like, oh, it's just like Slay the Spire, except
yes, yeah.
Insert some description.
How is this different from Slay the Spire? Why should I stop playing Slay the Spire to play this other thing?
Yeah. And I will say that I have tried a number of them and liked quite a few of them, but none of them have stuck the landing quite like Slay the Spire. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to revisit as well, having now played, a number of all other variations on the theme that have come out since Slay the Spire's release.
Yeah.
Cool. Good choice, TJ. I'm excited. Let's do it right now.
Cool. All right. Yeah, let's fire it up.
No,
I can't do that. We gotta finish this.
We gotta do the
play
thing.
it for the next 3 hours. Terrible.
This is the main product. We should, before we get into sort of like what have you been playing, kind of that conversation, we should mention that we do have some new music this week, some funky new music on the way in and on the way out, by RJ Lake, the composer behind games like El Paso Elsewhere and An Airport for Aliens Currently Run by Dogs.
That's a real game, I think.
It is. It is a real game, and that is really its title.
I like that you can just call a video game anything.
Yeah.
Like they're not really rules around it.
I mean, God of War. Just ridiculous. Who thinks of these things?
Right. I mean, that's true for a lot of things, but for some reason, it's just like, why? Like, sure, that's a title of a video game.
It's like, you can't make up all your own words, but, all words are made up, so...
That's true.
Yeah. We just collectively agree that we understand what they mean, but it is just nonsense.
Yeah.
Anyways, RJ Lake's music is not nonsense. It is amazing. So you should definitely go to their Bandcamp at spellmynamewithabang.bandcamp.com and listen to a lot more stuff. The El Paso Elsewhere soundtrack, there's 2 soundtracks, are amazing and totally stand up and are complete like musical experiences, even out of the context of the game. I was blown away by them when I discovered them last year, months before I ever played El Paso Elsewhere. And it was absolutely one of my most listened to things of 2023. So definitely check that out at the very least. Would recommend.
Yeah, very good. I haven't played the game, but I definitely listened to the soundtrack. Extremely good. And also just all the other stuff in the catalog, a lot of breadth in there. Like there's this the aforementioned Airport for Aliens. There's this other one. Oh, I can't remember the name. I'll put in the links because it reminds me of Splatoon, but just lots of fun stuff.
Nice.
Lots of good music.
Yeah. So, well, I was going to say, what have you been playing on your vacation? But I know you played a lot of Slay the Spire, obviously. What else? Anything else?
I took my Odin. I put Final Fantasy IX on it. Man, previously I was playing this. I was playing the remaster on the Switch, and it was fine, except it kept crashing on me, and I was just like, "This is unacceptable. How did this get released by professional video game maker Square Enix?" I was like, I can't deal with this. If this game is going to go on for like 40 hours, I can't just have it be crashing all the time.
Yeah.
So I just went and put the original like PlayStation 1 version on the Odin, and I took that with me. And I ended up having to replay like the first 5 or 6 hours of it, which was annoying. But I feel like I'm enjoying it more this time, or more than the remake anyway. It's still kind of just a lukewarm experience as far as a Final Fantasy game goes. But man, just there were some weird things about the remaster / remake thing that just weren't really working for me. The most noticeable one, I mean, beyond just the fact that it crashed randomly, is that it's like, okay, so it's based on a PlayStation 1 game. So just imagine what video games looked like back then. Imagine how large televisions were. And then so take that and try to like stretch it out onto a modern display. You end up with whatever they ended up doing with the remake, which is you have all these 2D backgrounds. They're like basically like 3D renders, but sort of flattened out, like the old classic Resident Evil games where the sort of pre-rendered backgrounds with 3D characters moving around on them.
Mm-hmm.
But the backgrounds have all been sort of upscaled to work on modern displays without being too pixelated. And as a result, they all look kind of like, a little blurry and just not really correct.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, all the 3D characters running around on top of them are like 1080p or whatever, like super crisp looking. They just like completely out of place, and it like just accentuates the fact that the backgrounds are not great looking. So not a really pleasant game to look at.
And it's not some like 2D HD effect kind of thing?
No, not at all. It's like, okay, this game, it looks kind of ugly, to be honest.
Oh, wow.
So there's just all this weird visual stuff happening with it. The whole interface was just kind of laggy, and I don't know how to explain that. But ever since I've just gone back to the original, it's like, okay, yeah, the whole game is lower resolution, but like everything is that same resolution. So it just looks correct, if that makes sense. It's like when you go back and play like Super Mario Brothers or something. It's like, oh yeah, it's only like 240 pixels wide or tall or whatever. But it's not like the backgrounds are very low res, and then you have like this crisp sprite of Mario running around. It looks like he's from a different game. So overall, a much more cohesive experience. And then the fact that I'm playing it on the Odin just means I can set the whole thing to run at double speed. So it made replaying the sections that I had already played again a little bit less painful.
And the Odin is your little handheld Android emulation.
Yeah, it was my Android handheld. It does everything. But it's great, and I was able to, put in some more hours with this in between the times that I was not playing Slay the Spire. Man, I was expecting to play a lot more of this, but Slay the Spire is just all-consuming. I really had to make an effort to put it down. In fact, it was just... If it wasn't for the fact that I've just been having the worst run of bad luck in my Slay the Spire runs, I maybe would not have touched this at all. But at one point I was just like, I can't deal with this anymore. Just like, give me a good card, give me a good relic or something. Just like stop insulting me with the stuff that you're giving me in these runs.
And Slay the Spire says no.
No, it's just merciless.
Yeah.
So I had to forcefully put that down and play some Final Fantasy IX, which is, like I was saying the last time I talked about this, it's not really my favorite Final Fantasy game. I'm playing it this time mainly to to prep for the Final Fantasy 14 expansion coming out soon, which supposedly has a bunch of Final Fantasy 9 references in it.
Okay. Yes, I do remember that.
Plus, it's just been a while since I played this in general. And I'm still having the same kind of reaction. It's like it's not really blowing me away. It didn't blow me away when it originally came out. But it still seems like a perfectly serviceable like JRPG, if that is all you need. Certainly I've played worse, but it's just kind of an interesting thing to come back to.
What is sort of like the legacy of Final Fantasy IX? Like, where does it sort of stand in like the hierarchy of regard as nostalgia has sort of rolled on for the years?
For some reason, it's a lot of people's favorite entry in the series, which makes me insane. Because at the time, like even at the time, and I was like really into it when it came out, just because it was like the shiny new Final Fantasy game. I was like, well, this isn't as good as the last two. What is it? I don't know. It feels very like safe, especially compared to the previous ones. It's like, I don't know. It's like, I feel like stuff just happens in the story for no reason or with like little explanation. Like an hour into the game, you just have a full party worth of characters. And I'm just like, why are these guys all together? They just happen to sort of bump into each other during the intro. I like, that's fine.
Yeah.
They could just go on their little arbitrary adventure together, I suppose. But I like when, there's a little more reason, a little more justification behind it. I do remember, like,
but
like
hour,
none
I'm
of
just
these.
cut you off, sorry, but an hour in does not seem like you've like earned it yet. I mean, this, my experience with Persona games and Shin Megami Tensei games is like you're 17 hours in, you're 40 hours in, and you're still adding new characters to your party. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Persona has the opposite problem, where it's just like please give me somebody else to put in my party. But in this one, it's they just kind of come together randomly, and like I was saying, none of these sort of realizations I'm having feel new. I'm just sort of being reminded of them, because like even in the first time through, you get introduced to a bunch of characters throughout the game, and like there are definitely a few of them where it's like, well, why is this guy joining the party? Who is this? Do they have any significance to the storyline? Like maybe very slightly, but at the same time it's just like, oh hey, these characters apparently knew each other from somewhere that was not previously explained. I guess they're just in the party now because they want to be. So I don't know what's really going on there. It's that part has actually been a little surprising. It's like I felt like there was more justification for some of these characters joining up, but in some cases it just feels like you bump into them and they're like, "Oh, you have an extra slot in your party? I guess I'm in your party now." So that's a little weird. That was not quite how I remembered it going. But if you like turn-based combat and you like walking around a world map, then you could probably do worse than Final Fantasy IX. Oh, but like I was saying, it's a lot of people's favorite entry in the series, just because I feel like it was it just came along at the perfect time where it was like one of the first JRPGs that people played. So it just kind of has that effect, and people have very fond memories of it.
Was it like first on a new console or something like that?
No, it wasn't. That wasn't even the case, which is also kind of weird to me, because I was, a lot of people feel this way about Final Fantasy VII, because that was like literally the first JRPG for a lot of people. But
because
then this
it came
one,
with a specific console.
Well, no, because it was like before 7, JRPGs were fairly obscure. In the US anyway. But then you got this one coming out that has all these like pre-rendered movies, and it's got this like sort of anime looking cast of characters, which is, was pretty popular at the time. Just a lot of like really eye-catching visuals and marketing, especially around it.
Gotcha.
And then still don't really understand what happened with 8. 8 was probably a little too weird for everybody. But then 9 came out, and it's like kind of a return to a more fantasy setting than the previous ones. It's got kind of like these big head, super deformed anime characters as the art style. it's like I said, it's just very safe. It just feels very much like what you'd expect from a JRPG, like a fantasy JRPG. So
Mhm.
I felt like, it's very easy for people to just get into in that sense. There are no weird subplots about environmental terrorists or, childhood amnesia or whatever was going on in 8. But yeah, it just feels very safe and kind of like, I don't want to say uninspired, but a little bit uninspired.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was hoping I would have some more clarity into why people are just so in love with it from this playthrough. But no, I'm mostly just having the same reaction where I was like, yeah, it's all right. It's like a 3 out of 5.
Do you feel adequately prepared for your new expansion?
No, I want to get through the whole thing. I'm on.
Oh man, 2 attempts and you still not finished.
Well, no, because first of all, the first time just kept crashing on me, which is awful. But this time I'm already significantly farther along. I'm on disc 2 out of 4.
Oh wow!
Because back then games came on multiple discs because of all the CGI cutscenes. But making some good progress. If I can just stop playing Slay the Spire long enough to get through the other 3 discs, should be in good shape.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, thanks.
Slay the Spire says no again. Yeah,
it does honestly help. I can just play the whole thing in fast forward mode because sometimes I don't need to see the whole battle intro every single time. I want to sort of sprint across the world map. That saves a lot of time.
Nice. That's cool. I do appreciate the those little modifications sometimes in RPGs where you can speed up the text or speed up the combat or just skip to the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, I get it. I understand. I don't need 70 hours of this.
Yes. I remember, so many sort of new ports of classic RPGs from that era now just have a run button, or sometimes they'll just have the characters run at double speed by default. And it's like, oh yeah, that is better than it was previously. Thanks for adding that.
There weren't enough buttons back then to have a one for run. You had to pick and choose what went on your buttons.
Yeah, well, actually, I feel like it's the opposite. I feel like there are a lot of buttons that were just unused in JRPGs, especially because there was the menu button and there was the interact button, right? And then on the Super NES, you had 4 other buttons on the controller. What were you doing with those? Not a whole lot that was useful.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. I guess it is always sort of surprising that a JRPG will dedicate a face button to the menu rather than it just being the pause button or something like that.
Oh. Yeah, there's a separate pause button in this. That's kind of weird. There's the menu button and the pause button.
Crazy.
Yeah. Man, who knew what they were doing with making video games in 1999 or 2000?
For the first time. Or, the 9th time, I guess. But
yeah. Anyway, so it's kind of just I'm playing an RPG.
Yeah.
I haven't booted up Dragon's Dogma since I've been back, so I'm going to try and put that off as long as possible, try and get through this, because that's another thing that I want to check off before the expansion shows up.
Yeah. Just another distraction.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Cool. Yeah. Anyway, what have you been up to for the last few weeks?
Well, I was going super hard on Animal Well, and then Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door came out. And I'm not going to talk about Paper Mario now because I want to get more before I review it. So give me a couple weeks. Next episode will be Paper Mario Insanity. But yeah, Animal Well. What is this? This is a thing. This is kind of single person indie developer who made this really kind of complexly assembled Metroidvania type of game where you're a weird little blob in a well full of animals. Thus the name.
Hence, yes. I love when they say the title.
Yeah. You're a little blob who kind of wakes up inside of a plant or in a flower, and you can jump and little else initially. So you are going from room to room. It's all very dark. It's kind of drippy, plants and stuff like that. But every time you go into a different room, there's a different type of animal. And sometimes the animals are like afraid of you, or sometimes they will attack you and try to eat you. Sometimes
are these
care
like
about you.
Recognizable animals, or are they other blobs like you?
No. You don't run into many other blobs. It's mostly like there's a lot of cats and there's dogs and there's a little dachshund thinks you're a ball and will chase you around and stuff like that. And or there's storks, big storks, and they have long necks and they will try to like peck at you and eat you. What else? There's squirrels, and the squirrels are afraid of you. They'll run away. And things like that. So it is like, and plus there's like also like lots of animal totems. There's, you'll go to a room and there'll be statues of a bunch of different animals in the room, and some are interactable and some of it's just part of the environment. There's a ghost of a cat that's very scary. And will pursue you, but there are things you can do to sort of like protect yourself or to scare the ghost away, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, it is sort of like oddly kind of in love with animals. And each interaction is sort of like a special like surprise sometimes, where it's sort of like, are you a friendly animal or a scary animal? And because you're just a wee little blob, you don't really have the ability to fight back. Like running and hiding is your kind of only sort of like source of protection. But sometimes you need animals to like trigger things for you. You need them to walk over a platform, or you need them to pursue you so that you can sort of run the other way and get past them and things like that. So you do play chicken sometimes, no pun intended, with some of the animals to be able to sort of like progress because you are trying to do kind of Metroidvania things. You're trying to find sort of secret doors and unlock locks to be able to get into other rooms. It is like a stacked map, like a Metroidvania. So rooms will be on top of others, and you'll have to find sort of the way from one room down into the one below, where that is the thing that you actually need to get to. So you're trying to sort of also like envision the map as you're going and figure out like, where do these rooms connect, and what abilities do I need to get from room to room. So it is kind of unique in the sense that it's a Metroidvania where you don't have the ability to sort of like directly combat other things. If you think sort of Metroid or Castlevania, obviously combat is a big part of both of those experiences. That's not really a thing in Animal Well. Running and hiding or kind of, tricking the animals to pursue you or whatever is also is like the only way you get to sort of like interact and survive.
I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's certainly a more unique take on it. I have long said I wish developers had sort of like the confidence to not just make combat like the cornerstone of every video game ever made. And it's cool that this is more about puzzling and a lot more about platforming. You will do a lot of like very precise platforming, a lot of like very specific time-based challenges sometimes that can be quite frustrating. And less about sort of you having the right weapon at the right time to blow up a robot or something like that. Other than sort of like the plotting and the sort of level design, you would not confuse this with like a Metroid game in any way, because it doesn't hit those kind of Metroid hallmarks where it's, okay, I see that there's a door that I need to open, but I don't have the like the power ball or the screw attack or the missiles that open that door yet. So I'll have to come back to that one later. The abilities that you get in Animal Well aren't like upgrades or new things that your blob can do. They're just things that you can find in the environment. So you can pick up like a bubble wand that blows bubbles, or you can pick up a frisbee that you can throw, or there's a flashlight, or there's firecrackers. And the game doesn't explicitly tell you this is the place where you use the firecrackers. You have to sort of like try out the firecrackers and see what the effect is, and then sort of figure out later, where is the place that I need to sort of deploy that thing. And sometimes it's two things. Maybe I need to blow a bubble, jump on top of the bubble, and then throw a firecracker. So you're trying to sort of stack, not abilities, but items in a way that is advantageous to you. And it does feel like, in the best sense of like a modern Zelda game, where like, I don't know if this is what they intended to be the solution, but this is my solution.
Are these like items that you just keep with you, like in your inventory, or are they, you sort of like encounter them frequently between screens, or how does that work?
You do. Yeah, you have an inventory, and some of the items that you do find are yours to carry with you throughout the game. there are other things that you do find in the environment that are kind of like single use.
Okay.
Like fireworks, you can carry 3 of them on you at any time, but you'll use them pretty quickly. But there are plants that grow them through the environment. So sometimes if you're in a room with plants growing fireworks, you can replenish your inventory. But 2, it is occasionally like a little clue about like, oh, maybe I'm supposed to use them here somewhere. Or maybe I'm using them in the next screen for something. Maybe it's giving them to me for a reason. Maybe this is a tip. Which obviously is sort of a classic video game thing. Obviously, there's always a save spot and an ammo box just before the big boss.
Yeah.
So yeah, Animal Well definitely has some of those kind of like, classic video game conventions kind of baked in, but it is also doing its own very unique thing with the structure of a Metroidvania and tying your progress to kind of creative use of found items rather than, upgrades and unlocks and new abilities and sort of the traditional things that kind of are baked into a Metroid experience. So it's really unique. It is a bit of a puzzle in itself, which I think the best kind of Metroidvania games generally are, about sort of trying to figure out how to get from room to room, how to unlock specific doors, how to progress. It doesn't ever really feel like there's a story you're trying to sort of suss out. It really is just sort of, you're a weird little blob and you're trying to not get eaten. I have heard that there is like a reset that happens at some point in the game, but there's a second half that has like an interesting hook to it that everybody's blown away by. I've not gotten there yet, so I don't know what that thing is. I
heard that's when it gets really annoying, or at least it's like later in the game. Well, I keep seeing people talk about, and I don't think this is a spoiler, but there are like puzzles later on which involve some sort of like community effort to solve. Like you have to work with other players.
Yes, I've heard that as well. Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. But I've also heard that that is maybe not really essential to sort of like the main, I don't know if you would call it like a campaign, but like the collaborative stuff sounded a little more optional.
I've run into a couple of those like community objectives, and so many people are playing Animal Well that they've already been solved by the time I get there.
Yeah. Is it just like already solved in the game somehow?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. So I imagine there's some sort of element of a live service that is happening there, at least in this one room. And it is revealing something in the game that would only be revealed if, a million people went into that room or pushed a button or did something. But again, Animal Well has been a bit of its sort of like surprise hit, I think, and a lot more people are playing that than maybe the developer originally intended. So the side effect of that is by the time I have gotten to those rooms, the puzzles are already done.
I don't know how I feel about that now that you frame it that way.
I don't know if there's, maybe we're not talking about the same thing, or if there's more of this later that you contribute to.
No, I think we're talking about the same thing. I mean, I haven't played it either, and I've been, sort of trying to avoid learning too much about this, because it does sound kind of mysterious. Yeah. But I was like, I don't want to like join a Discord or whatever and chat with people to progress in this game. I just want to sort of, explore and get through it and figure out the puzzles on my own. So, but now that you said like, oh yeah, all those weird puzzles that you said you didn't want to do, those are all done for you. I'm just like, well, I don't know if I like that either. It's like if I, logged into Death Stranding and there are just bridges everywhere already. I was like, well, I guess I didn't really need to do anything then. So that's great.
Okay, I see what you mean. Sure. Yeah, I know. It is my understanding these are not necessarily like essential things that sort of like clue you into the next puzzle. They're just like group objectives. I don't know. It is a little disappointing that I didn't get to sort of like contribute, but it doesn't feel like it's broken or like the game is somehow now easier or not as cool because of it. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
Well, I mean, it's good that it's not really. It doesn't seem like it's affecting your experience one way or another.
No, not at all. And in fact, there was a room that I went into where, like, again, there were like shrines and displays and things like that in this mysterious underground chamber, and I was like, oh, this is one of those things I saw on the internet, and it was like a Polygon article about like 1 million people have made this thing happen in Animal Well, and I was like, well, I was not one of the 1 million people or whatever the magic number was. So the only reason I knew it was a community thing was because I had read an article about it the previous day. Yeah.
Could you like start this up in offline mode or something, and then just not get the community updates? Or
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know what mechanism or sort of level of programming is making that stuff happen in the game. I suspect there's got to be a way to play version 1.1 of this or whatever to not be online. I don't know. I've not tried it that way, so I imagine there's got to be maybe smarter gamers or what, more antisocial gamers out there who are trying to sort of see some other version of Animal Well. But no, I've not thought to approach it that way. Yeah. All of that said, it's a little bit of a different sort of approach to gaming for me and kind of my comfort zone. Like, I like Metroid games. I like Metroidvanias. I didn't like that last Metroid game, but in general, I like Metroid games. And I've liked quite a bit of the Castlevania games. I liked all the DS and 3DS Castlevania games too. I like Metroidvanias kind of in general, particularly when they are more about puzzling and sort of picking and finding your way through the environment more than combat. So I do like that about Animal Well. I don't like that it does result in a lot of like trial and error and backtracking. And there's one room that's sort of like a bunch of like bubbles floating through the air, and you have to hop from bubble to bubble to bubble. And you're like essentially like, every time you land on a bubble, it will sink a little bit because of the weight of you. So you have to move super quickly to the next one. And then you go up to the screen above it. The screen sort of slides up and there's more bubbles, and you're trying to get to objectives on the left and right of the screen by jumping from bubble to bubble. But if you fall off, if you don't stick the landing, you'll fall down like 4 screens.
All the way down, yeah.
Yeah. And then you have to sort of like get back to the place where you have the room that allows you to jump on the bubble again and start your climb one more time. And there are a number of kind of interconnected rooms like that, where if you're not doing the precision platforming just right, it does throw you all the way back to the beginning and you have to start your climb over again. And it just feels
a little frustrating.
punishing.
That's why you got to come back after you get that space jump, and then you're good.
The gift of flight, right? So it's that stuff can be frustrating, and I get that that's sort of like part of the challenge and the objective of the game. It just feels a little abusive to me. And I like platformers. I don't know if that's like, but
maybe gamers just like that now. I remember there was a big room like that in Hollow Knight, and I was like, "Oh, really? You just do this every single time? That's irritating." Yeah. And then, so I heard this is also somewhat influenced by Hollow Knight, which
I can see that.
I kind of like, that means good and bad things to me. Because I read something like this all surrounding there's just a lot of discussion about Hollow Knight around the release of this game, and people were saying things like, what were they saying? Oh, they were like, what if they made Hollow Knight but the map was better or something? Because that was one of my biggest complaints with it. And I saw responses to that which were like, oh, but the way the map like doesn't show you everything is one of the best parts about Hollow Knight. It's like, are people insane? Like, how is that something people enjoy?
Yeah.
Maybe I just lost touch with what gamers want. In fact, I hope I've lost touch with what gamers want, because that's awful. But it does raise a lot of, a lot of new red flags to me when they're like, oh yeah, inspired heavily by Hollow Knight. I'm just like, oh, do you mean the parts of that game that I liked, or the parts that made me stop playing that game?
Yeah, I feel like there were a lot of reasons why I stopped playing Hollow Knight, and those are definitely some of them. I think the objectives were not always clear to me in Hollow Knight.
Oh, no. And, that was one of the things they were like, oh, yeah, I love that. You never really know what to do, and you have to just backtrack across the map a million times. And I was like, no, I got other things to do.
Yeah, and I think Animal Well gets that part of it right. Like you'll go into a room and you'll sort of have a sense of like, okay, I see an exit over there. Yeah, good, we're going back to the Portal 2 thing. We're like, I see the exit. So what series of switches and mechanisms and doors do I have to open to be able to get there? What obstacles are in the way, and what abilities do I have that will allow me to get through, etc. And there's a giant animal there that wants to eat me. So you're trying to like reverse engineer your way back to where you're standing right now, where your little blob is perched. To be able to kind of put all those elements together. Like, I get the objective, and I don't always feel like that was clear to me in Hollow Knight. Like I would go into rooms and I was sort of like, is this a friend? Is this an enemy? Will it kill me if I fall on that? Should I go left or should I go right? Like none of that was clear. And I get that that's, again, maybe that's the appeal of Hollow Knight. But that just seems frustrating and overwhelming to me. And Animal Well, like more often than not, I would go into any room in here and I was sort of like, oh, I know what it wants me to do. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm good at being able to do that thing. And there's going to be some trial and error to that. And therein lies sort of, my frustration with the game. It does feel like progress is very slow and that it is very particular about the way that you sort of deploy some of these solutions sometimes. But I do like that.
That's just something gamers want now. They're just like, no, I don't want to get it immediately. Or I specifically do not want to get it for like the first 10 or 15 times.
Yeah. I don't need games to be endless experiences. I don't need a game to be like, 100 hours of DLC after I finish the credits and stuff like that. Like, sometimes it's fine if a game is a finite thing. Sometimes it's fine if it's 5 hours in and out or 30 minutes in and out, as long as that 30 minutes is interesting in some way. And Animal Well brings that, absolutely. But I don't need it to be like this 100-hour thing. I'm a little worried about it sort of flipping and there being kind of a part B to it because the part A feels like a fully like realized thing.
Well, I think the part B is all the community stuff that is probably optional.
Yeah.
And then I've heard even that there's like a third tier to that, which is just whatever the next, extension of that is.
100%ing it and getting everything, right?
Well, no, I mean, it's like the community stuff, or maybe then it gets into like the really sort of like extra esoteric community puzzles.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. I have purposely not read that much about it.
You may have read more than I have, actually, it sounds like. So, yeah, I like it. It's charming. It is occasionally difficult, but it does have sort of like a pump your fist, go, yes, kind of thing when you achieve a thing that you're trying to do that's really difficult. It's beautiful. It is like really like kind of gorgeously assembled. It is all black backgrounds because it's dark and spooky with like lit up pixels, pixel art.
Yeah, it looks like an old like super lo-fi CRT screen, right?
Yeah, it does even have sort of like the scan lines and stuff that kind of pass through it. So by design, if you have trouble looking at that, you can turn those off. I've noticed that's in the menus for people who have old eyes like mine. Yeah, it is kind of beautifully assembled. It has really kind of cool, like, kind of like, creepy, drippy audio effects and stuff like that. I think it is clearly a thing that this single person developer has like labored over for years and has thought about every sort of approach and angle to. And I do like that's even within the kind of like the extent of that being a very curated and specific experience, there is still a sense of kind of like exploration and trying out new things that you pick up and seeing what some of the objects will do and what effects they have on kind of the animals in the environment and fun things like that. So yeah, it's just really, really cool. And there's a lot of discovery, but some of it still feels very kind of achievable and approachable and not kind of obtuse in a way that is frustrating. The most frustrating thing thus far has just been kind of the trial and error with some of the platforming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm rambling a little bit at this point, but I like it. I just wish it weren't so hard.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's no option.
Which is my sort of capsule review of many video games, I think, at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't just give yourself infinite jumps or something like that.
Not in any way that I found. I do wish this did have like a Celeste series of sliders and switches that I could kind of like, not like make it sort of just play the game for me, but at least kind of turn down some of the frustration.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only reason I ever saw credits roll on Celeste is because I could go in and go, well, I'm tired of that thing happening to me. Let's turn that off. Or at least let's make it happen slightly less often.
When are they just going to give me like a no clip mode for Hollow Knight? Just really irritate all those Hollow Knight fans. That would be great.
There would be riots in the streets.
Man, speaking of Celeste, you should play Chicory. Because I think you'd really be into that. That's more of a Zelda-like than maybe a Metroidvania-like. But I feel like a lot of that game involves the same thought processes as you've been describing as Animal Well and sort of solving those
little black and white
puzzles.
Dog painting game?
Yeah, you gotta restore color to to, what is it called? It's like the Breakfast Kingdom or something like that. Luncheon Kingdom, something.
You had me already.
Yeah, it's real good.
The Breakfast for Dinner Kingdom?
No, that's one of the towns. There's like breakfast and dinner, or it's like dinners or suppers or something. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of like everything is food related, so it's all
Nice.
very fun.
Yeah, I think I have that. I remember you playing it quite a while ago, and I think I bought it on your recommendation. I don't know that I've played any of it, so
yeah, that's good. You should fire it up.
Maybe that's a backlog attack.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
Summer's upon us, DJ.
It is. Ooh.
Get your backlog affairs in order.
What was I going to play this year? I don't remember. I had some good / cursed titles that I was going to get into, but we'll save it.
The cursed backlog.
That's always cursed. At least one of them.
So this is a cool thing. I admire Animal Well. I think it's kind of a unique product. There's not a lot of games that sort of feel like this. To take a Metroidvania and then to take all the combat out of it entirely and make you just sort of figure it out on your own, I think is a really cool and unique way to sort of approach this type of game. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, I'm gamers, I would recommend at least checking it out. But yeah, I have no regrets.
Well, can't say that about a lot of games these days.
It's true. The only regret I have is that Paper Mario came out and I more or less stopped playing Animal.
Oh no.
I'm not good at going back to games.
Are these, you're playing both these on the Switch?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, see, that's why you gotta split it up. Gotta get Paper Mario on the old Xbox or whatever. I'm sure that's on everything. And that's then play this on your phone. I don't know.
Play it on my Odin.
Yeah. Well, you can't play it on your phone because that's where you're playing Slay the Spire. So.
I've never tried Slay the Spire mobile. I will have to.
It's good.
No, I won't. I won't have to try that. Let's not do that.
The best Slay the Spire is the one you have with you. That's what they say.
That's what I've heard. Cool. Speaking of Slay the Spire, friendly reminder that we will be streaming our approach at sort of co-oping Slay the Spire this coming Monday night, June 10th, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Go to twitch.tv/VGHangover so you can tune in and participate.
Yeah.
We should wrap this thing up.
Let's do it.
What time is it? What day is it?
Yeah, what day is it?
If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, you should follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. If Twitter is a website that still exists. And you can always get...
It's hanging in there.
It is, yeah, despite all the evidence to the contrary. You can get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about this episode at VGHangover.com. That is also where you can get a link to our Discord, where you can hang out with us and the awesome people in our community, chat about video games and other fun pop culture stuff. You can get that link at the VGHangover.com. And maybe we'd encourage you to subscribe, rate, and review us on your podcasting app of choice. We're on many of them, if not all of them. So make sure you thumbs up, subscribe, download, all those other fun things. Leave us 5 stars if you have the ability to. And, last but not least, help us by telling your friends about the show.
Yeah, we appreciate the help getting the word out, getting those good recommendations. And it's great if it helps bring in new listeners, because that's always fun. We want to give thanks this week to RJ Lake for our new intro and outro music. If you'd like to check out more of his work, you can go to, oh my god, are you going to say this every single week now?
Hell yeah. Do it.
You can go to spellmynamewithabang.bandcamp.com. Next intro music, 4 letters or less in the Bandcamp URL. No, it's fine. We appreciate having the music on here.
There's only so many URLs that are left in the world.
I was like, I guess rjlake.bandcamp was taken. Sorry, I'm not going to keep slagging on this. No, once again, that URL is spellmynamewithabang.bandcamp.com. You can get the soundtrack to El Paso, Elsewhere, and that airport game, as well as a bunch of other fun stuff. So please check that out.
We'll be back soon. We'll be back next week with a stream. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a whole new episode. Make sure you get both of those things. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya.